Good morning, and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today we're going to sow French marigolds. They are a very thin seed, so don't plant them deep. Either lightly press them in or just barely cover them with soil. I'm going to try both ways because I'm curious which actually works better. Now start your marigold seeds indoors 4 to 6 weeks before the last frost. Right now, it's 3 weeks before our last frost, but that's going to be okay because in my experience, they grow really quickly. They germinate best at 70 to 75 degrees. And they, on average, germinate from 5 to 14 days. We're going to start bringing them outside to harden them off after the last freeze. Here, that's the beginning of May. Then we're going to plant them into the garden mid-May, 2 weeks after the last frost. Now, I plan to plant them in 3 locations: in the front garden, in the soil, in some big pots on the porch, and into our green stalk planters. Now, the size they grow is going to depend on where they're planted. The ones in the soil are going to be the biggest. The front pots are pretty big, so those are going to be medium size. But the ones in the green stalk, they're going to be small. It all depends on how much space they have. So in the ground, with full sun, mine tend to get pretty large. They get really full of flowers. I've read that it says to plant them 8 to 12 inches apart. The closer you plant them together, the smaller the plants will be. The farther you space them out, the bigger they'll get. Now this is a dwarf variety, but it can still grow pretty big. Now in my green stalk, which is in mostly shade, they stay small. Same variety, but different conditions produce different sizes. Now this room is the perfect temperature for germination, but it is full, so I'm going to have to move them into the other grow room. That front room is colder. It runs 60 to 65, so I am going to have to use a heat mat. And all my seeds I cover with a humidity dome. Holds in the moisture and helps with germination. That second grow room, it is filling up fast. Good afternoon and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. It's the very tail end of April. Only a few days are left and it's time to harden off our marigolds. These seedlings are only 2 weeks old. Marigolds grow fast. Now I sowed 2 different ways. These sides I covered with a light layer of soil. And these 2 sides, I just pressed them into the surface sowed. And I was curious, which would germinate best? Now, I really can't remember which is which. One of these sides is my own saved seeds, and the other is seeds that I bought from the store. But they all germinated equally in 4 days. I really didn't see any difference. And if you hear noise, it's because Dale, my husband's working on the air conditioner right out there. Now, the marigolds are only going to stay outside 2 hours today because they're not used to the sun and the wind and the temperature. Then they're going to come back inside under lights, either in the kitchen or the second shelf I've set up for our many seedlings in the living room. Because I have no desire to be carrying trays up and down from the basement every day, every morning and afternoon. I'd rather have them all here on the first floor. And every day I'll increase how much time, how many of hours they stay outside. Today 2 hours, tomorrow 4 hours, and the goal is outside full time. There's going to be so many seedlings hardening off soon that the patio would just fill out. So I've set up a shelf. So the shelf is in a protected area near the fence and the house because there's less sun and wind here. But every day I will move the shelf and expose them to more and more full sun. Our other sunflower seedlings and zinnias and tomatoes, they're already in the full sun. So these are going to harden off, increasing the time outside and exposure to the weather 7 to 10 days. Now I'm using a blueberry bush netting with a zipper. It's perfect to protect these from digging squirrels and curious birds. And 2 weeks after our last frost, here in the mid-Atlantic, that means after Mother's Day, we'll plant these into the front garden and into the green stalk planters. But I'm not going to need them all. 2 I'll save for the grandkids to plant into their garden, and the rest I'll give away free to the neighborhood. I have a community shelf set up behind the garage. That's where I leave plants that I don't need. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today it's time to plant out our French marigolds. These seedlings, they're 3 weeks old. Now you want to space your marigolds 8 inches apart. That's going to create a beautiful border. Now French marigolds are an intermediate size. They're going to measure about 8 to 12 inches tall. Now marigolds are really fast and easy to grow. They're a great flower for children and new gardeners. Now, if you want to grow in containers, try growing the Signet marigolds. They tend to be more rounded at the top and only 8 inches tall. But if you want really tall marigolds, pick the African marigold variety. They tend to be 3 to 4 feet tall. You can direct sow your marigold seeds after your last frost. But I use a no-dig method of gardening with really deep mulch. So plants work best for me. Now I do move apart the mulch to plant into the soil. Never plant your plants directly into mulch. Marigolds are drought tolerant, but they will benefit from mulch. Now they don't need staking, but I do need to protect them from 3 things. Digging animals, here, typically squirrels and skunks, and I'm going to use some squares of hardware cloth. I'm going to surround each stem with 4 pieces. Then I'm going to secure them with these landscape pins. And I'm going to use this Sluggo to protect from slugs and pill bugs. It is organic and it won't hurt animals, but birds love it. So I'm going to put it under the mulch, otherwise the birds will just peck it all off. And last, I'm going to use this cage to protect the plants from me. I don't want to accidentally step on them. For example, I haven't yet planted my peppers. Hot peppers are going to go between the tomatoes and the marigolds. So when I plant out my hot peppers, I don't want to accidentally back up and step on the marigolds. This will just help me be more aware that the plants are there. It will also give some support. Now, I don't plan to feed my marigolds because my soil is really rich with layers of organic matter I add every year. But if you want to feed your marigolds at time of planting, add a slow release fertilizer. From then on, they don't need to be fed. They are very low feeders. They're easy to grow. Like I said, they're drought tolerant and they don't require deadheading. They will benefit, but it's not required. You can also pinch them back, but these aren't big enough to do that yet. What else? Now I remember. They're drought tolerant, but you do want to water every day for the first week because their roots haven't been established yet. Now, what am I going to do with these? I'm going to save 2 for the grandkids, and the rest I'm going to give away to my community. Then I have these here that we're going to put into the green stalk planters in about 2 weeks. Now, marigolds will flower all summer through fall until the first freeze, and they're edible. People add them to salads. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today we're going to plant marigolds into our green stalk planters. This variety is French marigolds, and I grew them from a mixture of my own saved seeds and what was left over in last year's packet. These plants are 6 weeks old. Marigolds grow really fast, and they've already hardened off for a month because it's been so cold and rainy. I couldn't film planting them. So because there was such a delay, I did pot them up again because the cells they were in were too small. Now, I've found that using good-sized plants in my green stalk works best for me. I don't direct sow seeds in the pockets. I start the seeds under lights in the basement. And this is what has led to my success with green stalks. Now, I have 4 green stalks. And the spring flowers haven't hit their full bloom yet. Because like I said, it's been really wet and cold and rainy. Plus, this side of the house gets very limited sun. Only 2 hours a day and maybe some in the afternoon. So these are really behind the in-ground spring flowers. So I'm going to leave 2 green stalks with the spring flowers, and I'm going to switch out the other 2 for summer flowers. Now I did save those spring flowers, and I put them in a container. So we'll see if they survive. So I'm going to plant 4 tiers each with 1 pocket of marigolds. I redesigned my 5-tier planters into 4 levels. That's the size that works best for me. So there's going to be a diagonal of marigolds in each green stalk. Now the marigolds that we planted in the front garden, they're going to get to be about 8 to 12 inches tall and wide. But here in the green stalks, they're not going to get that big because these pockets are smaller and they get less sun. So don't expect a full-size plant in your green stalks. It has its limit, just like any container that you grow in. Expect a smaller plant. Now don't overwater your marigolds. Test the top inch of the soil, and if it's dry, then go ahead and water. Now in-ground marigolds are going to require watering less frequently, and containers dry out quicker, so you're going to have to water more frequently. And if you notice, I don't use the top reservoir because this is on a slope. And it's tilted and it doesn't flow correctly. Plus we have these really tall windows that look down, and I want the top to be beautiful and full of growth. This is what works best for me. I water each pocket. Now the green stalks are a great design, it just doesn't work properly in this space. Now marigolds, they're not heavy feeders, but this container has limited nutrition. This soil is left over from last year, so I will have to feed the marigolds. And I plan to use a general blooming fertilizer from Fox Farm every 2 to 4 weeks, depending. Now deadheading and pruning aren't required, but they will benefit from it. And I do remove the old spent flowers and any brown, dead looking stems. I cut those off. But near fall, I leave a few flowers to develop into seeds. Now, it's hard to find heirloom seeds for marigolds, but the hybrid seeds save well and grow nice, beautiful new plants. I've been doing that for years and years. Now, can you see how the camera sloped? I do turn this a quarter turn every day to give it more equal access to the sun. Now, these flowers are edible. People tend to use them in salads or over prepared dishes, but they can be spicy. Now you want your soil level with the top of each pocket tier. Don't make it down lower because then the plant sets too low and it's down in the shade. I like to alternate greens and flowers in each pocket. And the greens are perennial. So I have strawberries, herbs, and creeping jenny. And they all come back after winter. Now, if you notice, these strawberries are smaller than the ones that are in the ground because, again, this is a container. And it's not going to be the same size as the one in the garden. You can see the sun is coming. What else? Also, I said I'm going to feed 2 to 4 weeks depending. Well, it's going to depend on the plants that it's sharing with. I need to research how often these strawberries can be fertilized because I didn't put these in here until the summer. We had a drought and some of the strawberries were suffering, so I moved them to the green stalk. Now let's get the last one planted. Squirrels will dig in these green stalks because they want the soft soil to hide their food. And yes, they'll even climb to the top and dig. So I need to protect these plants. And once the roots are established, marigolds are drought tolerant, but they will benefit from mulch. So we're going to water them in well today and every day for a week to make sure those roots don't dry out. Marigolds are also rabbit and deer resistant. That's great if you live in the country or even here. We have rabbits in the city. They're such an easy flower to grow and they're good for kids. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today we're going to have a marigolds update. In mid-May, we planted out French marigolds in 4 different locations and 4 different ways. Today we're going to compare how the same seeds and the same plants developed and grew depending on where and how they were planted. Now these two are a good example. They were planted at the same time. They were watering the same. I watered them every day. I do deadhead both of them. They're on the same feeding schedule of every 2 weeks, but they get different amounts of sun. This one gets more sun than that one. So they're two different sizes. And so this one also has less flowers. And I do deadhead the flowers. Now these plants are loving it here along the side of the house between the row houses. And they do get limited sun, only 2 hours a day, but they're still doing great. I also deadhead these every day. I water them every day, and these I feed once a month. Marigolds grow very quickly, and I suspect that these here have outgrown their pots because the leaves are starting to show some stress. So we're going to pull one up and see, and if they're root bound, then we'll put them out in the in-ground garden. Yes. Now, if I want these marigolds to keep growing and live, they're going to need to find a bigger home. And in the ground's going to work best for me right now. I could prune them, but because the roots are too crowded, they're just not going to grow. Now, next to these, we have marigolds in 2 of our green stalk planters. Same seeds, planting the same time, but because the pockets are smaller, the plants have less space. Of course, the top ones are doing best. They get the most sun. And the second tier, they're doing well too. But the bottom 2 tiers, they don't have any flowers on them. And they're stressed out. Now, every day I do turn this a quarter of a turn. So they're getting less sun, and they're more spindly, and they have less flowers. So this one's a good example. Today, the marigolds are facing the back. So basically today, they won't get any direct sunlight. The marigolds in the front are doing fantastic. I never water them except at the very beginning when I transplanted them. I never feed them either, but I do deadhead. In the very beginning, nesting, I think it was starlings, just kept plucking them clean of leaves over and over again, and one actually died. So I had to cover it with a net, and after a couple of weeks, they were big enough. I could take it off, and now they're doing great. I'm not sure why this one has gotten so tall. I need to prune it back. It does have flowers in the middle, but you just can't see them. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today it's time for an August garden tour. Thank you for visiting Withrow Urban Homestead. See you later. Bye-bye.